Ted, excepting with my wife and a little bit with my mom and dad, I have not shared anything about my journey with Baba to anyone.
Dr. Surajit Sen, a New York theoretical physicist, had to learn to confront his own doubts in life to recognize the value of the teachings of Sri Satya Sai Baba.
My first darshan of Baba was in 1980. I was a rebel. I've always been a rebel. So I didn't believe in him. Here I was revolting. I didn't want to accept it. What is this? What is this nonsense? Why should I buy anything like that?
He could not fathom the absence of logic.
He didn't seem like an ordinary human being because as he walked on the sand, there were no footsteps.
Who am I was his constant concern in a world with few answers.
I always was interested in figuring out, who I was. I found myself in a way to be a misfit in society.
But eventually, lessons learned from Sai Baba helped him the most.
There's an old saying, and I've used it publicly quite a few times. First he hooks you, then he cooks you. You're in the marinating process right now.
I have barely hit the frying pan, He was there with me. He was saving me. He was guiding me. He was answering me. It took me a long time to figure it out.
Finally, through Sai Baba, Dr. Sen learned how to combine both of his major concerns, science and service.
I was not happy as a scientist. I needed to do service. I needed to help people who are in need.
For the first time ever, Dr. Sen speaks out on Souljourns about what he has found that others may discover.
I just hope that his love touches everyone.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing more healing than that in the universe.
Welcome to Souljourns. This interview was recorded in Williamsville, New York, and Coronado, California on September 10th, 2022.
But I could never explain why I was unhappy because I could never figure out what was my life all about. I mean, why am I really here? I mean, what's my job? When I heard about, when my uncle said that, this uncle of mine I told you about, that, Sai Baba has said he's an avatar and he's God, I said, wait a minute, let me read up on him. And I started reading up on the Vrindavan lectures, summer showers. And I read I think I read, the first thing I read was Samuelson's book, The Holy Man and the Psychiatrist. He's, and others, Howard Murphy and Jack Hislop, how they laid out what they saw, what they learned, what they gleaned, what they experienced. And I initially when I read about that, nothing seemed believable to me. Again, I was 18 or so years old, and then a chance came when I was about 19. My parents were going to go to Puttaparthi, and so I was in college at the time, and they wanted me to come, and I said, hell no. I mean, I'm not going to go spend my time hanging out in an ashram. Forget it. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm reading the books. You should be happy. Let me be.
Furthermore, I'm a scientist.
Yeah, I'm a physics student. What the hell am I going to tell my friends? So, but then it turned out that my mom, and this was a time when I had so many sort of clashes with my mom simply because she wouldn't give up on me, and thank God for that, right? But as a teenage kid, I didn't like it. So she came back from Puttaparthi and she said, you know what? I don't care if you believe in him or not. I just want you to go. I just want you to go. If for nothing else, have a visit. Just make a trip. So I said, that's not a bad deal. I'm bored at home. Why not make a trip, So I took the train and I went all the way from Calcutta to Bangalore. I took a bus, ended up in Puttaparthi. And then basically, the day I arrived, I found myself in the Darshan, seated for Darshan. And sure enough, he came out, Baba came out, and he did the rounds, and he came near me, and I gave him a letter. I had a letter with me. I had a little bit of time to settle down, maybe about an hour or so. So I'd scribbled something. I don't even know what I scribbled, but I think I told him that I wasn't sure who he was and I wanted to learn about who I am, that kind of stuff. And and I didn't have any expectations. And he came and took the letter from me. He didn't really look at me, but he came and stretched his hand out and took the letter. And I said, "Oh, wonderful. My job is done. Let's go back home." I literally thought that. But my uncle had told me that you can't just leave willy-nilly like that. You have to take his permission. He doesn't even know who I am. What about, how is this permission thing going to work? The following day, I was quite thrilled though that he took the letter, and I was still reading on him, and he didn't seem like an ordinary human being, because as he walked on the sand, there were no footsteps.
That's right. That's before the hall was built, huh?
Yes, there were no footsteps. There's a lot of sand, and you know what? There was a trace of his robe on the sand as he walked past, but there were no footprints in there.
That I haven't heard before.
And I swear, because I was looking for his footprints, I wanted to stretch my hand and take Pad Namaskar. He was there in front of me, but something inside of me told me that I shouldn't do that without his permission. And since he wasn't looking at me, I didn't stretch my hand out. But I was looking for, some footprints, so at least I could touch that. And lo and behold, there weren't any, right? This blew my mind. And then I indeed put my foot on the sand later on, and there was a footprint. So I was shaken.
There's an old saying, and I've used it publicly quite a few times. First he hooks you, then he cooks you. So
Yes.
you're in the marinating process right now.
I have barely hit the frying pan, And the next day, I wanted to ask him for permission to leave. So I gave him a letter, essentially saying that, thank you for letting me be here, visit you. I want to go home. I'm missing college, and my classes were on. I had just disappeared. And that day, he took the letter. If I recall correctly, he took the letter, and he gave me a quick look and did this.
There you go.
So I couldn't go.
He cooked you.
He cooked me. I couldn't go. I said, I'm now in really hot soup because I can't go until he lets me go. And he wouldn't let me go. I never felt more trapped in life. And here I was this wild teenager, very rebellious in nature. So
Did you call your mom and tell her the news?
No, these were the days, Ted, when phone calls were very expensive, right? I'm talking 1980, right? So, and I didn't even think of it. But I quietly prayed and I said, you know what? I would like to know who you are, and I'd like to be blessed by you at some level. The following day, I was sitting in the bhajan in the hall that's inside the building, Prashanti Nilayam building. I was sitting at the backside, and I was sitting actually quite a bit sort of in the middle of nowhere, not towards an edge or anything like that. And Baba was going to come in and go to his chair, and and he came in. I was observing him as he came in, and then suddenly he stopped, and he looked directly at me. When his eyes were completely fixed on my eyes, there was a brilliant smile, and then he raised his hand like this, and he left. He moved on. Actually, he did a few other little stops, but that was a very, very big stop that he did that evening. And something happened to me. I really felt very happy. I really felt very, I didn't know what to deal with that happiness, because it was not a happiness that I was used to, but I just felt really blessed is the word. And I had never felt that way before, Now that I look back, this cooking you that you say, the cooking had really begun. Mm-hmm. Then I came back, I think the I left the following day. I had to get back to my classes, so I didn't have much of a free time that I could play with. And my journey began, and I started reading. I had bought a lot of books in Puttaparthi, so I started reading and reading. And then in many ways, I would pray to him, but I had a life. I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I was running after girls. I was reading books. I was going here, going there, doing all kinds of bad things in life. Uh, but it took me a long time from that point on until I was probably in my 30s to realize that I wasn't alone. I was being guided. But it hadn't sunk in how much I was being guided. It was almost like, looking back, it was almost like he had put guardrails along my path, and he wouldn't let me get out of that. And if I got out of that, somehow he would save me. Because I was pretty stupid. I was quite prone to doing silly things, and being, sorry about that, being reactive and all of that. But he somehow made it amazingly palatable, bearable. Good things were happening. I mean, I'm a theoretical physicist. Theoretical physicists don't get jobs. I mean, they're like, I don't know. I mean, if there are like 500 graduating in a given year, probably only 5 to 10 of them become a professor.
I didn't know that.
It's ridiculous, and the kind of work I do, it's pretty sort of esoteric in a way, and that's how bad my field is, statistical physics. And it's unbelievable that I got a job. It's unbelievable that I made it through all the promotions without getting kicked out. In 2006, I became a full professor, and what is amazing is that I was very interested in learning about nature around me. But I was always very unsure on which problems to pick, because which problems you wish to pick and work on has a major role to play in your success or lack thereof. But Ted, what's amazing, problems fell on me. Problems fell on me, problems that needed to be addressed, that I could solve, that I could play a part in resolving. Beyond me going to look for them, they just arrived on my doorstep.
I have another problem for you. How in the world does a physicist interact with somebody called Sai Baba?
Yes. And this was my big problem and continues to be my big problem every day, because it was pretty much when I was at a dark time in my life. I was I was married for a long time. My first marriage ended in a divorce. I have 2 daughters. One of them is about 30, and she's a scientist in one of the major national labs in California. The other one is headed for a PhD. Taking care of them and being a dad to them when they were growing up in a household which had its own tensions was something I was not used to handling, because I had never seen tension in my life like that. And I did turn to Baba a lot. I would ask for help. And a lot of times I didn't get much help, it seemed. But then all of a sudden, I realized that the help comes asynchronously. The help doesn't come when I want the help. The help may come 5 years later. The help may come 2 months later, or even a day later, And I had to keep my eyes and ears open. He was there with me. He was saving me. He was guiding me. He was answering me. It took me a long time to figure it out. And that I thought was so amazing, that why would he respond on my timeline, right? I mean, you're talking about the supreme consciousness. You're talking about Brahma. You're talking about Vishnu. You're talking about Shiva. You're talking about Sai. You're talking about God, or what we think of as God. Not that our thinking matters to him, but what we think of as God, right? And why Why would he give a damn? But he does, right? And this kind of a relationship between the supreme power and the little quote unquote me, who is just a part of, as he says, you are a little wave in the ocean, you're a part of me. But this realization took a very long time to digest. The realization intellectually, and I still don't know if I've digested it right, but it's that. And then of course I got sick, as I had mentioned to you. I had a pretty bad precancerous disease, and I didn't expect to live. Honestly, this happened when I was 55. I'm 62 now, almost 62, and I didn't expect to live. I only knew that if there was a miracle, that's pretty much the way. And he saved me. I mean, I went through 2 surgeries. I went through a massive internal bleeding episode. He saved me. I came out healthier. I came out normal. I didn't expect to be around. And what is fascinating? What is fascinating is that I had struck a deal with him. So I always have these deals with power, in my mind. I have these deals. My deal was, if you let me live, if you save me this time around, I know I give you a lot of trouble, but if you save me this time around, I would love to return to Puttaparthi after God knows how many years, because after 1980, I had never been back. It was the only time I really saw him, right? But I never really yearned to go back because I felt him. So there was no need for it. I have a picture of him. I have vibhuti that goes back to 1983 when I left India, that my mom gave me. I still have most of it, if not all of it. I don't know how. And I didn't really yearn for that physical, closeness. And I did make a trip. So in 2016, after my surgery, when I had recovered, my wife and I, this is my second wife, I went back. I went back and I spent time. My parents had come with me that time, although they were quite old at the time. And I had also volunteered to, teach for a week at the university, offer something that might be of interest to the graduate students. And all of that happened. And I can't tell you how, what an amazing thing it was. What is interesting, I felt, was, it's whenever I connect with him, the connection may be maybe at a point in time, but the return comes over a long period. And the return comes in so many dimensions. And not only that, it is not just a return, it's him, as he says, him stretching his hand out, literally, him stretching himself out to encompass me and hold me tight and show me the way and take care of me. I mean, I find that unbelievable, honestly. I find that unreal, but it happens every day.
Well, I want to ask you a question, because you're just loaded with opportunities to probe deeper on this subject. Sai Baba left his mortal body a good number of years ago now. And the same question that I used to ask to people when he was walking the grounds of Prashanti Nilingam, I still ask today, and that is, who is Sai Baba? But I want to ask it with you through the eyes of a scientist. Now, I've asked that of plenty of Sai Baba devotee scientists, and I've gotten some interesting answers. They're all slightly different from one another.
Mm-hmm.
Your answer to that question?
It's very interesting in a way, because as we know, as we who have been blessed to have him in our lives know, each of us have a unique relationship with him. There is no standardization here. I wish I could be a teacher where I could have a unique relationship with each student. As a mere mortal, I can't do that. But he does it That's his modus operandi, right? Everybody is unique. Every relationship is unique. So in my case, the rebel that I was, or whatever he made me to be as I emerged in this life, um, I had to learn to deal with him. I had to learn to accept him in a way that was digestible to me, and he made it possible because when I'm doing my science, which I do most of the time, um, I'm really solving small problems, and it's the ensemble of the small problems that eventually make up the, let's say, my contribution of me and my students in an area, right? But when it comes to him, it's really the how and the why, everything coming together. In particular, the why. Why am I here? Well, I'm finishing a task that I couldn't finish earlier. I remember I didn't want to have any kind of a monk-like religious existence. I wanted to taste the world. Uh, I wanted the luxuries of life. I was missing it, but I got most of it, if not all of it. Whatever I had, I don't need anymore, right? I feel that I don't need anymore. I also realized that I was bored. I always got easily bored, and his guidance, I always felt that why do I get bored? My friends don't get bored. My colleagues don't get bored, at least not that I can tell. And here I am doing something, and after 5 years, I'm bored, and I want to move on and do something else, right? This this is something that I feel it put in me because I've become more open to exploration, to new things. I realized at one point that, I was not happy as a scientist. I needed to do service. I needed to help people who are in need. I mean, think about it. There are something like almost 8 billion people in the world, 7 point something. In my whole lifetime, I would probably teach 5,000 students, undergraduates and graduates combined. And that too is a very high number because I used to teach this large undergraduate freshman, sophomore courses that everybody takes, right? And that made me so depressed. I said, I live a whole life, let's say 70, 80, whatever number of years, and I work for so many years. And all I could reach is 5,000 students, and that too in a cursory way. I mean, it's pathetic, isn't it? So that made me realize that I needed to do more. But how do you do more, right? Sitting in Buffalo, how do you do no more? And so I thought that I need to learn about development and how development happens. And this is all Baba. I mean, answering your question, this is all Baba. So I applied for something called a Jefferson Science Fellowship, which is administered by the US National Academy of Sciences in Washington. And I got the fellowship. So I spent a year at USAID. Actually, it was 2020, 2021. And here I was, a brand new student all over again. Forget physics. I was learning development, right? How it happens, how it doesn't happen. What are the pitfalls? And I had the time of life in this whole year. I learned, I made friends. I learned from experts. I got to meet some amazing people. And because of COVID, everything was done from my dining table, right? I couldn't go to Washington. So when I came out, I realized that it is possible for me to do work because I know people in the NGOs in Bengal, where I'm from, and I could do a lot for them. I could give them a little bit of money when I had some extra money. I could give them ideas. I could give them suggestions. I could give them guidance regarding students. I could solve some of their vexing problems by simply talking to people I know who may be able to guide me. Most importantly, Baba was guiding me all along.
I hear you saying something that a lot of Baba devotees say, the need that wells up within us to do more. I think of that, the quintessential way of looking at seva is how can you do service selflessly that benefits others? I see that in you in spades. And I It makes me kind of
Thank you.
smile because I see how hard it is that you've
Mhm.
time and effort and deep thought to serving when
Mhm.
you're already serving. I'm not saying this for any other reason but to compliment you and to let you know that that's what I see you doing, and show me a greater service to humanity than that.
Thank you. You know, it has almost been like a thirst that I had to quench, and I'd been at it for a while, excepting I was not able to find the way in. You know, this particular NGO that I work with, Ted, I got to know them, if I recall correctly, sometime in the late 90s. But I couldn't figure out what I could do with them, what I could do for them, what I could do to them. So whenever I would visit Calcutta, if the opportunity presented itself, I am from Calcutta, so uh, then I would go visit them. I would learn about what they were doing, and they were so gracious. They took their time to tell me. Sometimes they would, you know, uh, feed me with their home cooked meals, and I would meet people that would specially come to share their stories and experiences of what they have, how this particular NGO has it's called Swanirvar, which means self-reliance. Um, how it has affected them, how it has changed their lives, changed their families, and so on. So I always felt very attracted to them. So when I started my journey at USAID, it was easy for me to go back to them and say, you know what, I can tell you about all these things that I'm learning, and maybe it's useful to you. Baba made it happen for me, you know. And they responded with open arms. Every weekend, every weekend, and sometimes on weekdays, I actually meet with them on Zoom, and at least for an hour on most days. And we discuss how to solve problems in novel ways, because they keep telling me, you know, what you can do for us, we can't do ourselves. So there is a role that Baba has made for me to play.
That's wonderful. You have these needs met before you even think of them, is what I hear you saying, by Baba.
That is a beautiful way of putting it. Like I said, you know, it's a path that has guardrails around, and sometimes the path bifurcates, and instinctively I proceed in one direction, or another, and again that's instinctive. That's him. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when I look back, it's almost like you have climbed a mountain, but you don't remember what pathway it was and who made it happen for you. You know, that's the way I feel. I mean, uh, because it wasn't easy. There was nothing. There was no gliding like him. You know, it was struggling, scratching, falling every step of the way. Didn't feel like it, though. I mean, so yeah, it is an incredible journey, and it's only a journey that the ultimate power of the universe can make it happen for you. You know, Ted, excepting with my wife and a little bit with my mom, I have not shared anything about my journey with Baba to anyone. The You asked about, you know, special events. Um, One of the special events that I think I should mention is, ever since I was little, uh, and this sounds bizarre, but I always felt that I didn't have a friend. And when I talk about a friend, I talk about a friend who was a girl, who was a woman. You know? Something in me always would tell me that I needed to find my soulmate. Don't ask me how I figured it out. I mean, this was weird. And I knew, because my first marriage didn't go well, you know, it was not something that um, I thought would ever happen. So I thought, oh, that was all imagination, right? All daydreaming. Every kid does that, maybe. No big deal. And then all of a sudden, I run into this person, and I told her, you know what? Have we connected before? And she said, well, did you ever visit Urbana? I said, yeah, sure, 1989. She said, no, that's the wrong year, because I left Urbana before that. Did we have common friends? No. What's going on here? So Baba did give me my soulmate. And that's my wife, Sarina. And I can't tell you um, how amazing each day of my life is. It's I have to literally pinch myself, that I found her. I found this woman that I looked for ever since I was like 5, 6, 7 years old, and a loner of a kid, somebody who remains a loner, but who is incredibly happy, who is incredibly empowered, who has been enormously blessed. Uh, Things have happened to him that I'm not sure I deserve, but who am I to even question? Um, it's. I just hope I have a long way to go, such that I can get closer to him. Every day, that's my struggle. I know when I say I, it's not really I. This is just a body. I'm a piece of him. I know that. And I try to live it. But the thing is, that I want him to wet me, if you will, if you know what I mean. It's like you are in the swimming pool, but you don't get wet. I want to be dripping wet.
Maybe you're already wet and don't know it.
I don't know. I mean, I just want to be wet as hell. I mean, because it's such a yearning. Because I realized I was reading. I read his books related to him, writings every day, and one of the things I was thinking about last night is what he says about forgiveness. And I never took it seriously. And I realized that I was reading this last night before I dozed off. And I said, wait a minute, one of the things I'm not good at is forgiveness. And I really need to get better. But this was like literally, this was like a lesson that he threw in for me as I was dozing off, because he wanted me to realize that this will make you get wet better.
Well, see, I think that same yardstick applies to everything that isn't pleasant in life. Everything that's unpleasant will make you better.
Yes, because these are tests, right?
Depends on how you choose to look at it, of course.
It's very hard, right? If something bad happens to you, somebody gets sick, you're dealing with some kind of big problem. I always turn to him. I mean, that's my first go-to, right? I'm in front of his picture, literally, begging, please be with me, please guide me. But this very little thing to get me wet, learn to forgive. It's not easy to forgive. When you feel like you have been cheated, or you have been unfairly treated by somebody that you love very much, somebody who means a lot to you. And we all in our lives go through these tests. My first obvious reaction is, let's get rid of this person, or I don't want to talk to him or her again. But that's so wrong. That's exactly what you are not supposed to be doing. Because once you forgive, you become lighter. Forgive doesn't mean that you forget, but forgive means that you become lighter. This is you see it in the context, you see it in the big picture, and that alone, I find, is so uplifting. It's so much, such a journey to help you get wet. Can I give you one last story before we go? So you asked about special incidents or things that I could share. So this is almost like, it's a little bit funny almost. So I was on a flight back from Delhi to New York, and this was it was on 11th of July. I was returning from India, We were somewhere over Greenland, come a long way. Still got about 7-8 hours to go. It's a 15.5 hour or something like that flight, right? 15-hour flight. And suddenly my eyes start having piercing pain. I think it was one of the eyes, piercing pain. And I looked at my wife and she was dozing, and I figured, my God, but what's the point in telling her? Poor thing is sleeping a little bit. Let her sleep. I mean, what is she going to do anyway, right? And I can yell and scream and nothing would happen. The plane would be still going in the same direction. I won't be dropped off the plane. So I quietly prayed and I told Baba, Baba, just help me out.
Yeah.
This is too painful. Please help me out. And it disappeared. Literally within 2 minutes, my pain was gone and it has not come back.
You've said several times, and you underscored it with great humility, how rich and blessed your life has been. And you regaled me with stories to a great extent. The problem of the inability to forgive someone is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that's best overcome. I know that it can be. I'd like to come back and interview you again one day and start from that perspective to see what more you've learned about it. I do know that, and Baba taught me this, that the more I turn over to him, I suspect there's something in us all that can resolve any issue, including that, and including a very sore eye flying from India to New York.
I just hope that his love touches everyone.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing more healing than that in the universe.
Surajit, this has been just wonderful.
Thank you.
I asked myself, how do I prepare to talk to a physicist about it? I didn't have to worry about that, did I?
Oh my goodness! Thank you so much, because this was a dream come true. I never even could dream of it. I'm so fond of your show that I sort of had to tell you and how much I enjoyed and tell you a little bit about my story. That was very instinctive, and I was very scared. I said, I don't know if Baba wants me to do this, and I'm so scared to disappoint him, because I know I'm very capable of disappointing him. So I'm very scared of it. So I was frozen stiff when we began.
Wonderful job. It's going to be of use. Believe me, trust me, I know about this, having been a journalist for 44 years. And now with these years in retirement, where I'm still a journalist, maybe closer to 60 years total.
Yes.
These stories uplift people as they hear them. They can be 100 miles away or 10,000 miles away. It doesn't matter. I know of two people who don't know much about your spiritual side, and those are your daughters.
Yes.
One day, if they choose and view the video, they're going to be really, really happy for you, even more than they are now. So,
I think you are right. I think that it's very difficult to share it with kids because I'm mostly interested in their stories.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't want to bore them with mine.
and this story is a leap for almost anyone. This is a big leap.
Thank you.
So take care. Good luck. God bless. Sai Ram. And until we meet again down the road after a half a year or a year passes, we'll do it again on forgiveness and other topics that come to you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. Love to you and love to Jody, and my very best. And Om Sai Ram. Thank you.
Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram.